there, Jen here, and today, let me adjust this computer a little bit here. Today I'm going to exclusively talk about Flint. Why? Because it's a very important story. We have a big documentary coming out early for members this weekend, in a few days for non-members, about Flint, and on Monday we are going to Flint. Me, Ty, and Jordan. So I thought it was appropriate to kind of give you some personal insight into what traveling to Flint, reporting in Flint has been like. You've heard it from Jordan's angle. You know that he's been there, I believe, 14 different times. I've been there 4 times, and Ty, I think, has been there 10 times. So why do we keep going back? Because what's happening there is literal genocide, and it can't be allowed to continue. Um, and it seems like no one else is reporting on it. No one else is going to report on it. And those that do, like local papers and such, they follow the company line that the water is fine and safe and good, or at least that it's on the way to that, and that everything's all right as long as you use a filter. All that is total BS. I remember one of the most important moments for me in Flint, reporting in Flint, was we interviewed this mother who had just moved to this Flint home 2 months prior. She had 2 children. One was a 1-year-old baby. And this 1-year-old baby, when we went to interview the mother, the baby was sitting on her lap. And you could see these big white blisters all over her legs, on her arms, on her ears. And we, of course, asked about that, what's happening. And she said, well, they came in and tested. And it seems like with her home, they did just a chlorine test. And they said, this water's fine, give it to your babies. So she'd been bathing her daughter and her son in the water, giving it to them to drink, because she was told by state officials that it was fine to do so. Well, it turns out it absolutely was not fine to do so, and she was in tears because she didn't have the means to go drive to get the free bottled water or to go pick any up from the store. She's low income, she has sickle cell, so she is not able to go buy the water in the first place. And they stopped with the free distribution of water, except for the kindness of the churches and the donations of good people. So she wasn't able to go get that, so she had to drink out of the tap. She had to allow her children to drink from the tap. And her tears were because she felt so terrible that now her baby was all broken out in these white splotches that the baby had been scratching and scratching and scratching because they were itchy, and turned them into sores. And this little girl was dealing with this. It was so sad. And at one point, when Jordan was interviewing or talking to the mother, I can't remember which, I held the little baby. And I just stood there on the porch of that home and rocked the baby. And I was talking to her and just saying, we're going to make sure that it's all right. We're going to make sure that you grow up healthy. We're gonna stay on this. We're gonna help your mom. We're gonna do everything we can, stuff like that. I mean, she was a 1-year-old. She didn't know what I was saying. And in some cases, there aren't things that I can guarantee. I can't guarantee that she's gonna grow up healthy. Her brother has already forgotten his ABCs and how to count, and he's older. And so, but I felt in that moment that I just needed to say, we're there for you, little girl. We understand what's going on. We understand how much your mommy loves you, and we're here for you. So I don't know how long I stood rocking that baby, but it was quite a while. And as I said, that moment will stand out in my mind forever, because that's what the Flint water crisis all comes down to are these little babies, these little children, the mothers and fathers and grandparents and community members who are dealing with their hair falling out, their bones becoming brittle, their health problems getting worse, their cognitive functioning getting worse. They're all dealing with this. And as a journalist, we're not activists, but what we can do is get the word out. What we can do is stay on the story and make sure that we don't let people forget what these people are suffering from. And another moment from that day that I will never forget, when the mother was holding the little girl herself, she said, I almost called Child Protective Services on myself so that I could get water for my babies. That, I'm a mother myself. I have 2 children. Um, you, you know, to say I almost called Child Protective Services on myself, that is the ultimate in love for your children. Even though she would get in trouble, or even though she would make that call, the kind of call that does get people in trouble, when you have Child Protective Services called on you, it's not a good thing, and it could even lead to the loss of your children. But she felt that she had no other options, and truly she didn't have any other options because no one was helping her. And that's just one anecdote, one story from our time in Flint. We knocked on 450 doors in Flint. We're going to be knocking on more in this upcoming trip to Flint. And there are stories like that, different stories, just it all kind of comes together because everyone is suffering. Everyone is angry at the state and the government for doing this to them. They feel like they have no recourse. They feel like no one's helping. They feel like they have no voice. And it really gets to you in a good way, in my opinion, only because it helps fuel your fire as a journalist. So that's why we keep going back. That's why Jordan's been there 14 times, Ty's been there 10 times, and I've been there 4 times. That's why we're going to keep going back. That's why we're going back this next week, is to fight for that mother and her children and all the mothers and fathers and grandmothers and everyone that we spoke to and more. What's happening in Flint, as I said, is genocide. It is ethnic cleansing. And those aren't exaggerations. That is what's happening. Flint is a majority Black city, and if this were happening in Ann Arbor, Michigan, it wouldn't happen. In fact, it wouldn't happen in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It would have been handled right away. But here we are on April 25th of this year, so this next week coming, it will be the 5-year anniversary of when they flipped that switch and switched to the Flint River water, did not use corrosion control, had the water strip all the pipes, corrode all the pipes, leaching the lead out into the water 5 years ago. 5 years ago, and these people still don't have clean water. Sure, they're switched back to the Detroit lake water, Lake Huron water, but the damage is done. Those pipes are already messed up. And sure, they're replacing some of the road pipes, and they just got some more funding in order to continue to do so. That will help some. But people have in-home plumbing too. People have pipes in their home, and technically they're responsible for their in-home plumbing. The in-home plumbing that was ruined by the emergency manager's decision to switch the water. What they were doing back then when they made that decision was they were planning to go on the KWA pipeline. And in the meantime, they said, hey, let's get off this Detroit water. It's expensive. Let's just use our own River water for the meantime. Then we'll go to the KWA pipeline, the Karagandhi. But that turned out to be the most disastrous decision. And there were so many things they could have done along the way to revert that decision. They could have used the proper corrosion controls. They could have done so many things. And it's not just lead in that water. There were the TTHMs that are cancer causing. And there were, the water was causing deaths. because of something that acts like pneumonia. There's so many angles to this. I honestly don't even know where to start, except for where I started, which is telling you how heart-wrenching it was to rock that little baby. And as you've heard me say, we are releasing a documentary. And so the next thing I want to do is get you excited about the documentary, because it will tell you so much more than I'm able to fit in a short period of time. The documentary has been a long time in the making. So we started filming last summer of 2018, and through the fall. And Ty Bayless has been working on putting the documentary together, and now we're ready for release. So members of Status Quo are going to be able to see the documentary for free and early. By early, I mean tomorrow, which is Saturday. And people who are Flint natives or live in Flint also get that same access. So if you're a Flintstone, if you live in Flint, write us at info@statusquo.com, and we will send you a link so that you can also view the documentary for free. And it's free for Flint residents forever and always. Otherwise, if you're not a member, if you're not a Flint resident, then it will be available for rental or purchase. So it's a small fee. We just need to recoup some of our costs in making this, because we're a small fledgling company, but we felt it was important to do this. And what Ty has done is miraculous, because it would normally take an entire team and a lot longer and a heck of a lot more money to make a documentary of this quality and of this importance. So thank you to Ty. He's just done a great job. And so let's switch over and I will show you the documentary trailer. So actually, this is our flushingflint.com website, and it's where we're kind of basing all of our operations for Flushing Flint. You can see that the header is actually the trailer starting to play on its own, just to kind of capture your attention. Then we have Erin Brockovich's quote, "A crime, cheating." So that's what she said about our reporting, about what the people were doing. And here we have a countdown. So the official release is in 3 days, 9 hours, 41 minutes, and 8 seconds. It premieres on April 23rd, 2019. But if you're a member or a Flint resident, then you get it tomorrow. You don't have to wait. Here is the trailer. Let me play it and I'll make it bigger for you.
When the water changed color to brown and orange, your administration said the water was safe. When people reported rashes, hair loss, odor, and even sewage, your administration said the water was safe. When Legionnaire's disease began to infect and later kill numerous citizens, your administration said the water was safe.
I'm a journalist. I'm just asking residents on this block if the state ever came to test their water.
They told me they needed to go to the kitchen sink. That's where they went. They turned the water on, let it run for, like I said, like a minute, and collected their sample.
Your results are interesting because 15 parts per billion is the limit. So them telling you to let the water run for that long, that's probably why you were getting such low results.
When they did it, do you remember if they turned the water on and took the sample right away, or did they let it run?
They let it run. They showed up at my door and they handed me a pamphlet and said, okay, it's safe to bathe in, before they even went in my house.
Have you had any problems health-wise since the water switch?
Itching, breaking down, stuff like that.
My teeth, yeah, so.
And I've had pneumonia.
My skin and my hair.
I've been getting a lot of boils.
Go ahead, get it. Bro, I'm telling you. And I get them like Just bro, and they were worse.
My daughter did have a miscarriage.
He was at Heritage Manor, went to McLaren, where they had the Legionnaires. My father is dead. They want us out of here. They want to make it a college town, and we are not a fool. We know it. Go up and down the street. Look, look over there. We have a forest in the dadgum city.
We can't drink our water. We can't go outside and play. We ain't got no parks.
They're just going in, people who don't know EPA regulations, people that are older, people that are younger, people that are poor, whatever. And they're just right in front of them cheating to try and get a lower number. So who the hell knows what the real numbers are? You always hear that talking point, well, like 3,000 other cities have worse numbers than Flint. I think what we're getting at here is we probably don't know the real lead levels in Flint because they've been flushing out the lead before they test.
And there you have it. That is the Flushing Flint trailer. I think you're probably intrigued, want to know more, and that's why it's so important that you view the documentary. You really can't get a grasp on what's happening. I mean, you saw the people showing the rashes and the spots and the sores they're getting on their skin. The documentary goes into other health ailments, exactly what's going on, exactly what people have been fighting for, all of that. And what the documentary follows is actually our reporting from last year. So I'm going to go into that in a second. But first, I want to ask you to please go to flushingflint.com, enter your name and email address so you can hear about Flushing Flint news first. And also go to statuscoup.com/join, which is a page that I'll show you in a little bit, and become a member so you can be one of those people that doesn't have to wait for 3 days, 9 hours, and 36 minutes, but gets to watch it tomorrow, which is Saturday. Now then, let me explain what the documentary is, other than showing what the people of Flint are suffering from and going through. What we found while we were in Flint is that state officials and community members that they hired were either conducting lead water sample tests incorrectly themselves or were instructing residents to do so. The correct way to collect a lead water sample is to, you have a bottle that they'd give you, you put it under the tap, you turn the tap on, you let the bottle fill up, you close the tap, you're done. Sounds simple, right? Well, what they were actually telling people to do is shocking. They were telling people to, set their sample bottle down, turn on the faucet. So bottle's over here, it's not under the faucet. They're turning on the faucet for anywhere from, we heard, from about 10-15 seconds all the way up to 20 minutes that people were told, or that these state officials did. So here's the water running, not going down the drain. Okay, and then after some time has passed, then you get the bottle and you put it under the water, and then you send it off and get it tested. But what happens then? Lead, you're supposed to catch the first draw water sample. When you let the water run and let that water run down the drain, and only then do you catch a water sample, you're draining all the lead out. You're getting all the lead out. That's why it's called flushing, and that's why our documentary is called Flushing Flint. And what we found was the sample group of homes called the Sentinel homes that they used for the official state line to declare the water safe. These residents were told to do that or had it done for them. So the official results used are falsified. They're incorrect. They flushed all the lead out, and then they say, oh, your water is fine. The lead results are low, or there's no lead in this water. But they tested wrong. They tested completely incorrectly. And one of the best examples we have of that is we had one resident whose home was tested by MDEQ, which is the organization that did all this incorrect testing. And the results came back at 2 parts per billion of lead. And for reference, 15 parts per billion of lead is the action level, is the super bad level. You're actually supposed to have 0 lead in your water, but they don't really take action until it's 15 parts per billion. So hers came back at 2 parts per billion, which seems okay. It's not close to 15, that's for sure. But then, she didn't believe it. She's an activist. Then she had her water tested by the EPA. Well, the results from that test, where they did not flush, in the previous test they did flush the water. In the EPA test, they did not flush the water because it's against the EPA guidelines to do so. The test came back at 85 parts per billion. So it did not come back at 2 parts per billion. It didn't even come back at the action level of 15 parts per billion. It came back at 85 parts per billion. So you can see kind of the dramatic change that can occur when you flush the water out first versus when you take the first draw sample. I don't mean to get too technical or complicated. The documentary explains this really, really well, and you get to see it kind of in real time when we ask people these questions. But I did want to show you a bit of the original story. Let's see here, that we actually had to publish it on Medium because we had several outlets that were interested, but once it got down to the nitty-gritty, they suddenly backed out. And we had this happen a few times. The New York Times even tried to steal the story, but even they didn't end up reporting on it. So, exclusive. Flint water declared restored after Michigan's environmental agency broke EPA testing regulations. And so Jordan wrote this back in November of 2018. I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to read some of the most important parts. When she opened her door on Dale Avenue in Flint on a summering, hot June afternoon, Amanda Janes mirrored her sick, reeling city, left barely standing in the wake of deindustrialization, gentrification, and a water crisis that never truly ended. For the majority of her life, Janes, 34, had lived without any health problems. Now, the mother of 3, head void of hair, was visibly struggling to stand on her porch. Chemotherapy was the culprit, and Janes was homebound and unable to work while caring for 3 young children as her husband worked round the clock. Her youngest, like a significant number of children in Flint, had developed a learning disability experts say could be linked to the lead in the water. Janes had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer and spots on her kidney. She and her children's lives have dramatically changed in the aftermath of drinking the water in Flint for well over a year after the state of Michigan switched from Detroit's water to the heavily contaminated and corrosive Flint River. Jane's story and countless others Status Quo uncovered are part of the silent crisis that has persisted in Flint long after media cameras left. In April, so this was April of a year ago, Michigan Governor Rick Snyder declared that Flint's water was restored and safe for consumption. This announcement came 4 years after the water supply for Flint was switched from Lake Huron via Detroit water and sewage to the Flint River. Proper corrosion control chemicals were not added into the water supply, causing lead to leach off of the underground pipes and ravage the city's water supply and poison its residents. As part of Snyder's announcement, he shut down the remaining state-sponsored free water pods scattered around the city, which had distributed free bottled water to the city's impoverished residents for years after the toxic water switch. But many residents distrusted the official declaration that the water was safe, as might be expected after a scandal so severe that state officials have been hit with manslaughter charges relating to the deaths of residents. After an in-depth investigation, which included speaking with over 140 residents in Flint this summer, Status Quo found residents' distrust to be well-founded. Officials from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, MDEQ, and Flint workers with the Community Outreach Resident Education CORE program, the latter trained by the former, ran residents' water before taking lead and copper samples, or instructed residents to do so when sampling themselves at home. In at least 31 Flint homes that were part of the data pool Michigan used to declare Flint's water was again meeting EPA regulations for water lead levels. The EPA's action level for lead is 15 parts per billion. And remember, that level is not a public health measurement. Experts say no level of lead is safe, but instead a corrosion control measurement. So if it's over 15 parts per billion of lead, then it can corrode. The practice of running water right before sampling, known as flushing, is a violation of EPA regulations for water sampling because it artificially lowers lead levels, allowing time for large quantities of lead, copper, and other heavy metals to flush out of the system. The EPA mandates that lead water samples be taken after water is stagnant for at least 6 hours and that samples be taken as a first draw, meaning right after the tap is turned on. These are regulations that MDEQ and other state environmental agencies are obligated to follow. So now it gets into how residents were told to flush the water first before taking the sample. And remember I told you about the special program that was used to declare the water safe. Out of the 31 Sentinel homes where residents reported to Status Quo that flushing occurred, 17 recounted MDEQ or CORE officials arriving at their homes and flushing before sampling themselves. The remaining 14 Sentinel residents told Status Quo they flushed before the samples they took based on verbal instructions to do so provided to them by MDEQ or CORE officials. Many of these residents on the Sentinel program that Status Quo spoke to sampled several times over months, and in some cases years. This is a violation of EPA regulations, which the EPA confirmed to Status Quo. Lead and copper tap samples used to determine compliance with the LCR, lead and copper rule, must be collected as 1 liter first draw samples after the water has stood motionless in the plumbing system for at least 6 hours, an EPA spokesperson told Status Quo. And also, state officials were not supposed to be testing for residents. The residents were supposed to be given instructions and test themselves. So that was another issue. Here we have Nakia Wakes, who has had miscarriages and a set of twins, and who blames that on the water, the loss of children. And indeed, the birth rates in Flint for around this water crisis are far lower than they were supposed to be. Many women had miscarriages. More on Nakia, and here she miscarried a second set of twins, so 2 sets of twins, and she says unequivocally it was the water. Nakia says, I don't even think I can carry babies anymore because of consuming all this lead and heavy metals and bacteria that was up in this water. Wakes told Status Quo, I don't believe nothing about my eggs are too old. I just don't believe that. It was the water. Flushing is cheating, Aaron Brockovich. Legendary environmental and consumer advocate Aaron Brockovich didn't hesitate when informed of Status Quo's investigation and findings. The only reason to do this would be to obtain a clear sample and report false information, she said, calling for criminal prosecution of officials that improperly flushed water before sampling. She also demanded citywide retesting to begin and for the reopening of the free water pods the governor shuttered. Falsifying a federal and state regulatory compliance test, that is a crime, she said. Brockovich also noted that, in light of these falsified tests, it's not possible, as has been done by many media outlets, to claim thousands of other cities have higher water lead levels than Flint, since Flint's real water lead numbers are now in question. Brockovich, who visited Flint during the crisis in 2016, condemned the flush testing status quo uncovered, describing it as Michigan cheating. Flushing before a first draw sample is a violation. The entire purpose of testing the first draw is to detect how much lead and copper have leached into the water overnight. Once it is flushed out, it defeats the purpose of a test. Flushing is cheating. She added that, based on status quo's findings, all of the state's Flint water testing should be tossed out. The sample set is representative of at least some not testing properly, and therefore the entire sample set should be invalidated, she said. Without ensuring proper training and compliance, one must assume all of the samples are not valid. An EPA spokesperson told Status Quo that running the water right before collecting a sample could result in a change in the amount of metals in the sample, though this would depend on the plumbing materials in the home and whether the home is served by a lead service line, as well as other factors. MDEQ's own sampling instruction video cautioned against flushing water before sampling. It says, remember, do not flush any water from the faucet before you take the sample. Written instructions provided to some residents also instructed to take the water sample right after turning the tap on, following a 6-hour stagnation period. So, we actually have a core worker on record as saying that I heard numerous people come in to drop off water test kits and say that, talking about flushing, but that's hearsay. I can't validate that. I can't say that that person is saying something accurately because they say things all the time, and truthfully, it's just a terrible situation because sometimes people don't listen thoroughly. She continued, there's times people have thought I said that, to flush their water before sampling, because now I am stationed at City Hall and I disperse the water testing kit, and people have brought them back thinking that I have said something like that because they were misinformed or didn't listen correctly or read the instructions. However, she also said, after we asked for confirmation that she received complaints from residents about being provided improper instructions, yes, I have heard that before. She also said that in her 2 years with the CORE program, she wasn't personally told to flush residents' water before collecting lead samples in their homes. Dr. Laura Sullivan, right there, who is someone we met with and who Jordan's met with a few times and is very much a go-to person for the water crisis and fighting against it. About flushing, she said, it's not the first time I've heard it. I've heard that a lot from residents, Sullivan said, regarding residents telling her their water had been flushed before samples were taken. She added that she wasn't personally surprised that that group of individuals, meaning state of Michigan officials, would violate testing regulations, but that the general public who depends on state officials to ensure safety would be surprised. Then we had this amazing resident who I really want to tell you more about this guy. Okay. So we were walking around visiting houses and we came upon this one guy and he was just standing there on his porch, or on his like veranda deck thing. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful home. And we walked up, and Jordan said, "We're asking residents about the water testing." And so the guy, Frederick Quincy Jones, invited us up. And Jordan said this too. It seemed like almost out of a movie. Like this guy was expecting us. He spent a lot of time talking to us, he and his wife. He was very familiar with EPA compliance because he was in the military in the past, and um, that was part of his job, was looking at EPA regulations, and he knew that you were not supposed to flush the water before taking the sample. But so the people who came in and tested his water, he let them do that anyway, and he just observed because he knew it was wrong and he wanted to see what they were doing. Now you kind of see why it was like out of a movie. Like this guy was expecting us because he observed and took note of it in his mind. And there he was, standing on his porch, looking out into the road. There we come together, and it was just wild. I mean, you'll see more of that in the documentary as well. All right, I'll go back to his story. Okay, Frederick Quincy Jones, a Flint resident whose home was also on the Sentinel program, knew something was wrong when MDEQ and Corps officials ran his water for 3 minutes before sampling. A former Navy medic, one of Jones' responsibilities was making sure EPA regulations were met aboard ships and other commands. "I know they violated the process, of course," he told Status Quo. "This was illegally done. The results were falsified." Jones let officials improperly run his water for a little while before questioning why sampling was being done this way. "I knew better. I was going to see what they were going to do. I'm not one of those types of citizens. I'm not stupid. So when you do pop the question, all of a sudden they get tight-lipped. And the longtime Flint resident thinks it's possible the improper testing was pervasive across the city. I would not be surprised at all," he told Status Quo. Now, unfortunately, the state of Michigan says residents seem to be having some confusion in response to our findings. But our investigation found that highly, highly doubtful, and it would not be the first time that MDEQ lied. So let's see if there's anything else I want to cover with you. The mayor said she takes our allegations very seriously. We had amazing people who were so helpful in our journey. So at first, here's some behind the scenes. We couldn't find the exact Sentinel addresses, those homes that were used to declare the water safe, because they weren't listed. Only the street names were listed. But we found this amazing geostatistician who zeroed in and found those addresses. It was amazing and perfect. And so we were able to take those addresses and then go visit the actual Sentinel homes. There's Amanda Janes, who we talked about earlier in the story, who has cancer. Let's see. Anything else I want to talk to you about from here? You can go ahead and read this story yourself. But you will get a more complete picture by going to flushingflint.com and watching the documentary. You'll see all of the people we met, everyone we talked to, all of the amazing moments, all of the heartbreaking moments. Definitely go to flushingflint.com. Go here and sign up to become a member to view the documentary early and for free. So don't forget to do that. I also wanted to tell you one thing that I forgot. So how did we figure out this flushing thing in the first place? Because Jordan and I, we aren't water experts. We know a lot, of course, but we didn't know actually at first that letting the water run and then taking the sample was wrong, because there are certain tests where it is right to do that. For example, chlorine tests, you let the water run and then you use the dipstick and you see if there's too much chlorine in the water. So we actually had gone to this man Bernard's house, and he told us, okay, yeah, they let the water run. This was one of the first ones we went to. They let the water run. I don't believe it's safe. This and that. And then we met up with one of the top Flint activists who knows so much about water. She's so involved that she's a water expert now. She truly, truly is. And in fact, she was one of the women. There's a Flint movie on Lifetime. I think it's on Amazon Prime now. And she's actually one of the characters who's played. Like, that's how involved she is. So we were describing what we'd found, that this resident had said, yeah, they let the water run and then collected the sample. And she goes, hold on, wait a second. That's flushing. Oh my God, they're flushing. And the shock on her face, like, it immediately transferred to us, and we both got it right away. Like, holy crap, we've just found something major. There have to be more. And there were more. After that, we set off on our journey and found so many more examples. And the only reason we didn't find more examples is because we ran out of time. I mean, we were there for a long time before we had this kind of breakthrough. And now we're going back. We're going to do some more canvassing as well. But I just wanted to tell you, like, without the help of the residents and these people who have trained themselves to become experts, we wouldn't have gotten where we are right now. And so the documentary, you really, really want to become a member, statuscoup.com/join. If you want to see that trailer again, get more info, go to flushingflint.com. Remember, the documentary is called Flushing Flint. So we've actually, beyond having those moments of like booming inspiration, like, oh my gosh, this is really, really something, we also have had those moments of, okay, now everyone has to know about this. We've got to get the word out right now. I've talked to you already about the fact that we tried and tried to get media on it, and they just wouldn't. They wouldn't pay attention to us. Celebrities, politicians wouldn't pay attention, but we persevered. Like, we kept at it until people started to talk about it. So I wanted to show you a little bit about that we did get some celebrity and Democrat lawmaker reactions. So there's Alyssa Milano, and we actually got her contact information, and she put out a great tweet about it. She said, I'm calling for an investigation of the real lead levels in Flint, Michigan, and they must reopen the state-funded bottled water program for residents until it is proven without flushing that the water is safe. We had Susan Sarandon calling out the shady testing. She said, shady testing practices in Flint showing safe lead levels in Flint. Check out Jordan Sheridan's article about why Flint's water still isn't safe. We had politicians demand answers. Congressman Ro Khanna. After Michigan poisoned Flint 4.5 years ago, Governor Snyder's officials broke EPA regulations to lower lead levels. Free water needs to be restored and an investigation opened. Thanks, Jordan Sheridan, for your reporting. And then Ro Khanna also said it's a no-brainer to have an investigation. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard said, the people of Flint are still being poisoned and cheated. I visited Flint and heard from people who still can't bathe in their own homes due to multiple toxins in water and who rely on charity for bottled water. There must be an investigation, accountability, and clean water for Flint. Attorney Lee Merritt said, in case you're wondering, no, they haven't cleaned the water in Flint, Michigan yet. They just found a better way of covering it up. Environmental advocate Aaron Brockovich was blunt, condemning Michigan for cheating. and this is what I've already read about Aaron Brockovich. The only reason to do this would be to obtain a clear sample and report false information, calling for criminal prosecution of officials that improperly flush water before sampling. She also demanded citywide retesting to begin, and for the reopening of the free water pods the governor shuttered. So you can see we got some reaction. Obviously, we wanted more, but we're going to persevere. We're going to keep going. This documentary, I think, is going to take off. I think a lot of people are going to watch it, and that's a good thing. It's not because we have egos and want people to watch our documentary. It's because this is so important. It's about the residents, it's about their health, it's about their safety, it's about the children, about the little baby that I cradled and held. It's about the child who forgot his ABCs. It's about the child who now has to crawl to the bus stop because his bones and joints have weakened so much. It's about the mother who now has heart palpitations and pain in all of her limbs and all of her joints every single day. It's about the mother whose liver is now failing. It's about all of these people. They deserve justice. No one else has stayed on this story. Local media covers it to a certain degree, but this flushing is a major, major thing. And actually, we just had the governor, the new governor, not Rick Snyder, the old governor, but the new governor, Gretchen Whitmer, confirm our conclusions. Actually, I do want to find that. 1 second. Let me look at that. Look for that. I don't remember where we clipped it. Oh, because it's part of a longer video. I'm not going to be able to find it right now. That's okay. But what she said was, yeah, I've heard people or the reporting about the water being run before sampling. And so that right there confirmed our reporting, because that is our reporting. So that was a major win for us, and we're hoping it kind of guides us through this documentary release this week in Flint, our reporting in general. There's some other really cool things that happened along the journey. I was trying to think of any more like anecdotes that I wanted to share. And actually, in the Airbnb we stayed in for a few weeks, it was run by someone named Jeff and his wife Jeanette. And they were like totally cool, progressive people. We had no idea who they were before we booked the place, but they were so progressive. They were totally into what we were doing. Jeff was an attorney, and Jeanette was like very holistic and healthy, and like calmed us down. Like after a long day going back there, it was a house on the lake. I think it was a lake. It was just so calming to go back there. But more than that, they had people over who were progressive. One of the songs that's in the documentary was actually played at their house, and it just so happened this great progressive guy had the perfect song and sang it, and we put it in the documentary, and it was just, we were surrounded by the right people at the right time. And I don't mean to sound airy fairy like, oh, back with the guy Frederick, it looked like he was expecting us, and oh, we just landed at this perfect progressive Airbnb, and they helped us, and they helped us sort through things, and they invited these amazing people who were totally into what we were doing, and we became fast friends, and it was exactly what we needed after hard days of reporting in Flint. But that's what happened, and it's cool, I think. So I have memories that I will never ever forget. Flint, it has a special place in my heart now, and it will forever. And I promise you this, until that water is fixed and clean and healthy, and until the people of Flint get the medical care that they deserve, the attention that they deserve, I will not stop. I will do absolutely everything I can to make sure that this happens for them, because it's not fair. These are good people. These are people who deserve so much more than they're getting. Okay, That's it for now. Please go to flushingflint.com. Become a member for $5, $10, whatever you can afford, and then you'll get the documentary for free forever, and you'll get it early. You'll get to see it tomorrow. So that's exciting. And we definitely want your feedback on the documentary too. Like, watch it, let us know, give us notes, send those to info@statuscoup.com. We want reviews, you know, like they have on Amazon, like people leave reviews. We want reviews sent to us. We want everything. So flushingflint.com, join, become a member. You won't regret it. And once again, I'll say it, I will never, ever, ever stop fighting for Flint until they get justice. All right, that's it for now. Bye-bye.